Okay, so today we're going to talk about stories and the effective use of stories. You all can read that slide, so I won't read it to you, but I do love the end. It says, sharing our stories lets us see another as humans being, not human beings, but humans being. So I love that. In today's Trainer Connection, we're going to explore using stories, why we use stories, how to use stories, and we're actually going to make a story wish list. Yeah, that'll be the most fun part of our day. So don't worry, you'll see. So when I was a little girl, I lived in Minnesota, and I was taught not to ask for anything for, a wish list for Christmas or my birthday, or so I couldn't say, I want this Barbie or that Barbie or whatever. My mom was very adamant that we just were grateful for what we got. And so, I was a really obedient little kid. And I don't remember when I started being taught that. I just always knew that. So I didn't ask for anything. I never asked for anything. Now, some of you who know me more personally, you know how literal I am. I'm very, very literal. I don't get sarcasm very, very well. So I really embraced that. I didn't ask for anything. And it worked for me for so very long because years went by. And so now I'm 7 and I am sitting at a restaurant with my family. We didn't eat out very often at all. So I'm sitting there and I have this beautiful little burger in front of me and it has all the stuff on it. And I have like crispy French fries. And my dad had even ordered me a tall root beer. And I'm sitting there and looking at it. And it was almost perfect. I was missing ketchup. And I looked at the ketchup across the table. And I mean, I'm sure as a little kid I asked for some things, but I don't remember asking for anything. I just got what I needed. That day I needed the ketchup. And my dad, I saw him look at me and look where I was looking, and he said, "Candace, do you need something?" And I was like, and he said, "Do you need something?" And I said, "Ketchup?" And he said, "Ketchup?" And I said, "I need ketchup, please." And he gave it to me and he said, "Candace, if you don't ask, you don't get." Okay, now I'm a confused 7-year-old because I thought I wasn't supposed to ask for anything. So that meant in my mind, everyone, if I didn't get it automatically, then I wasn't supposed to have it. Very confusing. Okay, fast forward. I think I have life figured out. I'm not supposed to ask for gifts, but I could ask for other things. Okay, I've got life totally figured out. And then I have a child. Well, I had 7 children, but specifically this one child. She's about 7 years old. And I had done the same thing my parents did. It's like we didn't make wish lists, that kind of thing. And so here I am with this 7-year-old. Her name is Dinah. And she kept asking me for stuff in the store all the time. I thought her saying, "Can I have this? Can I have that?" I looked down and I said, "Dinah, you ask me for things all the time." And she said, "Mom, you can always say no, but if I don't ask, I don't get." My daughter figured out life a lot faster than I figured out life. She totally did. Does anyone connect with that story? Does that make sense to anyone else? Or am I just the most literal person in the world? I have everybody's just looking at me. Okay. So stories, there are reasons that we tell stories. The 3 of them we're going to talk about today. And the first one is to connect. And so the story I just told you was meant to connect you to me as a person and help you understand me and how my mind works. The picture you have up now, that is Dawn Griffin. And she and Julie did a training, and it was called Let's Get Visual. And they used the song Let's Get Physical, and Dawn bounced out onto into the screen looking like this. And now I can't even sing that song without thinking let's get visual. I can't hear the song or even a little piece of it without seeing that picture. So that really connected that what they were teaching. And I think pretty much everyone remembers that training. So connecting to the learner is a big reason that we share. Sometimes the need to connect, that depends on, and we'll talk about that later, is why we need to connect. Another reason that we tell stories is to teach. So, okay, so what you're looking at here, that seems really odd, but what you're looking at here is a picture of an Inuit man, it looks like. And the Inuits are people from the very northern part of our hemisphere. And there was a time I was doing a lot of studying about parenting styles. And I learned that the Inuit people teach their children through stories, more so than other cultures. They teach their children, for instance, they tell their children that there is this monster in the ocean, and that if they get close to the edge of the ocean, like close to the ocean, that the monster will jump out and get them. So they're trying to teach them to be safe. And if your little child is so little, they're not going to understand the consequences. You know, oh, you might fall in, you might drown, or this polar bear might eat you. So instead, they tell them these stories from when they're really little about these monsters that lurk in the water that come out and grab little children. Yeah, they do. Do we have stories today that we tell in the United States, in the lower part of the United States? Do we have stories that you can think of that admonish children to act certain ways? Can you think of, I saw a blip, maybe someone's trying to raise their hand. Can you think of Santa? You better not cry, you better not pout. I can't remember the song, it's been so long. But you know what I'm saying? We use that song to try to encourage children to act a certain way. So we tell stories in order to teach. Another reason that we tell stories is to motivate people to action. I don't think that's the one. So motivating people, oh, there it is. So sad. Our best stories motivate to action. Has anyone seen a commercial like that? And you're just like, oh, I can spend 27 cents a day to feed the puppies or whatever it is. So the best stories move us to action. I was interested in stories and how they can be used in trainings. I've seen some of the best trainings where the trainer is really capturing and teaching with a story. Can we go all live, Bethany? There we go. So I was so interested about that. And I did a little research. I actually made a list, a resource list of articles. But what was so interesting when I started diving into it is I found this trainer that he trains people on how to tell stories in training. Like that's what he does. That's his career. That is so interesting to me. And his name is Paul Smith. He's a storytelling training coach. You learn something new every day. So what I did is I actually took his training on storytelling. And then I found some of his information for free that I didn't, because I couldn't share what I learned in the training because I don't think I can do that. But I found some free online things. So one thing I wanted to share was the storytelling course cheat sheet. And if you go back to like fourth grade, we were all asked to tell a story, and we were told how that goes, how to make a story. In order for us to use stories in trainings, we have to have stories to tell, and we have to know how to tell them well, and we have to know the reason and the purpose. So I thought we would review this little cheat sheet before we get into the next part. Do we have the cheat sheet to share? Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this we were able to pull offline, and it is from the course that I took with him. But the first thing we want to do is, set the hook. Why should people listen to the story instead of, thinking about their grocery list or what's for dinner? Then we set the context and the place, because if you don't let people know when it was, they'll be thinking, well, was this a long time ago? And the who is always nice. You don't want to leave a lot of questions that will distract people from what, the challenge and the conflict. So then, of course, the challenge and conflict, if there's not something happening in the story, then it's really boring. So when I was telling you about my inner conflict with asking for catch up, that was my conflict right there. And then the resolution, of course, can be just like what I learned, or what you want them to learn, or an understanding that you want them to have. So this storytelling course cheat sheet is and will be on the resource page that we're going to share with you later. So don't feel like you have to take notes, or if you want to use it, you'll have it later. But I just wanted to go over that first, because there are stories that we need to tell in training. And I want to go and kind of make a wish list. But I think before we're going to do that, let's just talk about how we're going to find the stories. We're going to start with why we need the story, and we're going to help make a wish list in a minute for that. We're going to talk about if you had a really good success with something, if you were really good at something and you had a really good outcome, that could be a really good story to use that other people could use. The other ones would be if you had a failure. You have to be pretty open for this one. But if you had a failure, that can also be a good story that someone can learn from. It's kind of hard to come up with a story when you're making a training. It's hard to, I know, because this isn't a training, but I had to come up with my own story to tell at the beginning. And I was like, which story should I tell? What was my purpose? My purpose was connect you to me. And that's why I chose that true story of myself learning how to ask for things. So you need to figure out what you want. Think of the success, the failure, moment of clarity. And if you still can't come up with that yourself, you can make a story wish list and you can share it with people, or talk to other people. So what I thought we would do here is we're going to actually make a little wish list of things that we need to talk about in training, stories we might want to tell in training. And we just went quickly over, you're not going to be pressured to make a story for this. It's really sharing an experience that can be turned into a story. So let's go ahead and I don't know if we're going to whiteboard, if we're going to annotate, but we are going to share with each other things we need. So this is going to be thinking about what you need or what you can offer someone else. I'll put that there too. So let's think of stories that we need to tell in training and your career path. What stories do you need to tell? And you can go ahead and write it on this blackboard. This is our story wish list. Are people able to write? I see a lot of people. Oh. What's important? What's important for people to take away from a training? Interactions. Yeah, like parent-teacher interactions. Sharing of each other's experiences and perspectives, like I just did. Yep. Staying engaged, stories about engaging, what's in it for kids, what's in it for teachers. Yeah. So if we have stories that can teach, motivate, or connect us, those are the things that we need to tell stories. So do you have a story about being able to engage kids in the classroom. You know, that if the story is happy, it can bring hope. Do you have a happy story that you could tell to bring hope in a training? What not to do stories? Yep. What not to do stories, to add excitement in the story. Yep. So if you can think of an experience you have had that might be a good story in a training, or if you have the desire, like say, I'm going to do a training about what the room looked like before I rebuilt it, before I set it up properly. You could have a story about that. What not to do stories build connection to in addition to learning. Yep. So another one, a couple I had was, let me see, stories about parent-teacher interaction. What have we learned from assessments that we've done? Have you ever, stories about nap time. Who doesn't have a story about nap time? Most people have stories about nap time. And so when you're training, when you're making trainings, what would you do? Oh, that's a wonderful way to do a story where the learners create the ending. That's wonderful. Okay, Glenna, it's okay. I love the case study stories. That's good. I've shared stories about being a kindergarten teacher. I'm sure that's helpful when you're training. Okay, so what we're going to do now, and don't feel pressured about this. So what I want to do is think about what we've just been doing with our brains and about the stories you've been thinking about. We're going to do a pretty short breakout, and we're just going to share an experience that could be used in a training, that could be used, turned into a story. Or if you're in a breakout room and someone might have a question, and maybe you can brainstorm to come up with a story that would be good in that situation. So this is the part of,
we're going to continue the discussion in our large group. So don't disappear back into
Zoom land.
land.
Yeah, Zoom land. Stay with us. Stay with us. Okay. So I hope that everyone had a chance to share an experience that could be turned into a story, or to ask someone for that. Would anyone like to share an experience they had that, or that someone told them that you think might be a good story in training? I heard some stories about assessments going on.
We had some great stories in our group building on how literal children are. So there were some kind of funny instances. One was put the ketchup on the table, and so the child dumped the bottle, like dumped the ketchup from the bottle on the table. And I mean, they did put the ketchup on the table. And then there was one that was in a forest class that was part of a unit on flowers and looking at Georgia O'Keeffe, and the children were supposed to paint the flowers. And so a child painted the actual flower. Like,
that's very literal, and I understand exactly. From our wish list, were there any ones about parent-teacher interaction? Any stories about that out there? What was on someone else's wish list?
Well, my group, in group 2, we covered nap time from start to finish. We all had nap time stories. From how to begin early at lunchtime, begin easing them into the nap time music and dimming the lights and getting them ready, to one story about one child who would not sleep until, that was my story, until she would tell me at breakfast, I'm not sleeping today. I'm not taking a nap today. So after about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and she didn't nap, and she woke everybody else up in the room too, I started telling her at breakfast, you don't have to take a nap today, okay? But you have to sit on your mat and let everybody else go to sleep, and then we can play puzzle, play game. So that excited her enough that she would get on her mat, and she ended up being the first one to sleep every day. So
Good. That's good. Thank you. That's a good story that can be used in a training. Yeah. So how did it feel though, Lena? That was your story, right? Were you sharing it, or that was your story?
yes,
How would you feel if someone used that story in a training?
how would I feel?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I mean,
Share
would you, yeah, because that's a really good, that's actually an interaction story, like just the teacher offering to give more, like that's a good interaction story. Does anyone else have something like that? A story that they heard or told? I know it's hard to come up with them like on the spot, but you all have experiences that are teaching experiences. You all have something that happened that you did, that you saw, that you participated in, that could be a great way to connect with people that you're training or motivate them or teach them. Real life does a much better job at doing those things than something we make up. Not that you can't make up something, but you can't make up what Glenna just told us. And you can't make up what Sharon told us about the child painting the flower or putting ketchup on the table. Those things are very relatable, and they give us connection. Connection helps us to learn. So when I was researching this, I did come up with a whole bunch of really good resources. And Bethany is going to pop them right on up onto the screen, and I'm going to tell you what they are a little bit. Hopefully it makes you a little excited to take a minute to go learn more about storytelling and trainings. But 1, 2, 3, 4, there's like 5 of them. Okay, so the first one, storytelling instead of scolding, that was the one about Inuit parenting. And there's a lot to learn in there that can be used. And it's actually its own little well of information if you start studying the Inuit style of parenting when it comes to childcare and interactions. The other one is 7 Elements of Great Storytelling. And this is Paul's, it's just like a little short, like he'll tell you how to do that. It's really good. Storytelling and training, what it is and how to use it. Again, that's an unboxed training and technology one. Very good. Then Parenting with a Story podcast. So Paul Smith, he actually is not just a trainer that trains about storytelling. He is actually, he wrote a whole book on using storytelling and parenting. That's interesting too. I wonder if that could be using storytelling and teaching, like for a teacher to use it in their class, which would be a good training too. And then the other one is Lead with a Story. That's Paul again. And then the last one is the cheat sheet that I showed you earlier on. So I know that at this time of year, there's a lot of spooky stories that people start telling, and there are really good ways for us to connect with each other, to motivate each other in training, connection, motivation, and teaching. And I hope that you start to think about using a story in your training. And your stories are important. The things you've gone through are important and will engage and connect the people that you're training. So I just encourage you to do that. Bethany, do you want to let us know about what's going on next? She's going to say no.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I am just trying to get everything working as well.
Okay.
Some of you may already know or be signed up for, but we do have 2 face-to-face how to train adult learning hour opportunities coming up. One is actually going to be this weekend in Scott County. And then the other one is November 11th in the Hazard area. So if you are still interested, there are still spots for both of those locations. However, if you're interested in Scott County, obviously the sooner you can get registered, the better, since that is happening on Saturday. But they are still both open. So if you are needing how to train other adult hours, or even if these topics just sound interesting to you, we are trying to get some face-to-face opportunities throughout the year as well. So this is our first go at it. So hopefully people that do attend get some good content and also get some hours towards renewal. So I did put the link into chat as well for Scott County, and then I'll throw hazards in here as well. If after this, we also put them on our Facebook group. You can also reach out to your regional training coach if you need it at a later date. And again, I'll drop the link in. You will still be getting an email later on from your training coach that has this again with the registration link. So you don't have to register today, but I did go ahead and drop that into chat if you know that that's a topic you're interested in, that is available for you, and everything like that. And Christine has also shared in chat a link and said that Story Corps on NPR is celebrating their 20th anniversary. They're highlighting 20 of their favorite stories. So that might also be another good resource for you guys to check out from in addition to our resource list that we provided.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. I think that's all we have today.